everyone for being here. I'm really happy to be part of this amazing event. Thanks to the organizing team and to the sponsor. This is really hard to organize, and you did such a great job. Today I'm going to walk you through a way on about how you can revolutionize your Kubernetes game through cdk8s. And before going into that, I just want to say a few words about me, so just we know each other. I'm Andra, I'm a solutions architect at AWS. I'm an ex-AWS community builder, and through this great program, I actually started to have this great passion for community, and it's all about community. We are here because community. And I started to volunteer out a lot after having this contact with the community. I am a volunteer for Grace Hopper Celebration, which is the largest gathering in tech for women and non-binary people in tech. I'm a volunteer at cdk8 Day. I will have a few more words about that on my last slide. And a few others. I don't want to bore you with everything I do outside work for the community. Outside the technical aspects, I have a huge passion for emotional intelligence. So I am an EQ champion. This means I'm trying to help out other people in their EQ journey. I'm an inclusion ambassador because I strongly believe in diversity in all of its forms. And I want to be able to support and enable that. But enough about me. I just want to also know you a bit. So I have a few questions. Who in the room is running Kubernetes clusters? Just raise your hands. Wow. Overwhelming. How many of those clusters are actually in production? Everybody runs clusters in production. Okay. So because I introduced myself and I also learned a bit about you, we now know each other, right? So you can tell me. I have a really, really personal question for you, and that's it. Who in the room has ever made the mistakes in their Kubernetes clusters? Okay, almost the same number of hands have raised. Okay. So I'm happy you are surrounded by people with same mistakes. We are a community, right? Let's dive deep and let's see a bit about what we're going to talk about today. I want to give you an overview of the landscape. I want to make a problem statement and really drive your attention on why we are talking about alternative ways of doing things in Kubernetes. I'm going to talk just briefly about YAML, what is it, what lacks there are in YAML. I will introduce you CDK. For some of you who know me, know that I'm a very active participant in the CDK world. And the main focus actually for today, because we talk about Kubernetes, will be CDK for Kubernetes. I will then walk you through a few next steps on how you can actually leave this session and start trying it out or see for yourself, is it something that suits you or not. And at the very end, a very important topic, community. Just a few words about the community around CDK and cdk8s. So without further ado, almost everybody raised a hand when I asked if you run Kubernetes in production. And running Kubernetes clusters in production can be difficult. Can be a complex task. It's not really easy to write and to maintain and to deploy new versions, for example. But maybe you're fine with that. Maybe everything works fine, and maybe it's just too complex for some people. And I should define what complex really is, right? But this is what we are looking at. We are looking at ways of making this process better, or better for you. If we look at a very simple web app, if we take this web layer, cache layer, and data layer for the database, and want to deploy it in production, for example. You will have to have several requirements. So everything has to be highly available. You will have to have a replica. You'll have to have multiple containers for the same application. You will have to separate those on multiple nodes, because if one of the nodes fails, you don't want everything to fail. But looking at this, you can say that, okay, but I want my web layer to talk to the cache layer and to talk really fast. So I want to place those in the same node, but I still want to separate the database. And of course, here are some other constraints and network policies and affinities and so on. So it's not really that easy to write everything and to separate everything, to allow only the things that have to be allowed in your nodes and to talk to each other. So other than that, you might still have a few people who need access to everything that you just deploy. So you have the, let's say, front office users as well. You have to give permissions for them and so on. So it gets a bit complicated right from the starting architecture that you can play with. And to do all that, you will just open a bunch of documentation and read through and see how are the network policy, what are they, how I will implement those. And really, if you're lucky and if you're a Kubernetes aficionado, that might be enough, right? I mean, you don't need anything else. But if you're not, you might reach the end corners of the internet with some really creepy blogs that have really creepy demos, right? That can happen. And you will reach to these manifests, right? Dear old manifests. And these manifests are not easy. They have over 400 lines of code, 422 resources, and over 50 properties. So it gets complicated. And we use YAML for this. And I'm not here to remove YAML from your lives. I love YAML. I think it's a very great tool. But let's see what are the drawbacks. So it's very easy to use. It's human readable. You can go through it and you can understand the resources and how are they structured under each indentation. That can be also cumbersome sometimes. It's declarative, so all fine. But when you grow, it's very hard to control the YAML templating. It promotes copy-paste, and we all know what happens when you copy-paste a lot. It's not really the best use case. And when you want to do updates, it gets really complicated. And on the other hand, there are these general purpose languages which are dynamic, are imperative. You might be a developer, but even if you're not a developer, I'm sure you have to know a bit of programming. So just to make sure, how many of you have used at least one programming language or are using in your current role? Just a bit of Python or TypeScript. So almost everybody, right? So it is focused for the developers, but even if you're not a developer, you're, let's say, a DevOps or an SRE, you still have to know a bit of programming, right, to do your job. So these languages are imperative, and what they bring to the table is these familiar tools and frameworks and workflows with which you are familiar already and you can just use. And this is how actually CDK started. CDK, it's AWS Cloud Development Kit. It is an open source software framework. It helps you to write infrastructure as code in your familiar programming language. Be it all of this you can see on the screen. So even if you like Python or TypeScript, that can be something that you can use to write your infrastructure as real code, how I like to say. And what is really nice when you have this programming languages support is that you can use those in your IDE. What happens when you use those in your IDE? You have autocomplete and inline documentation. So you might not even have to go in another place than your IDE to actually read about how to do things, right? How many of you have already heard about CDK? Okay, I'm happy to see many hands. Okay, nice. And in a nutshell, this is how it looks, right? So if you want to, let's say, just create a server in AWS that will be an EC2, you will have it in a VPC, which is basically a virtual LAN to isolate your server. And when you synthesize that code, it will give you some templates. So on the same concept, in the world of CDK, there are multiple flavors. We do have CDK for Terraform, for example. I had a very interesting conversation with Elif just a couple of hours before about that. But the main topic and what we're going to talk about today is CDK for Kubernetes. So CDK for Kubernetes brings the same advantages. It bridges this gap between developers and YAML files, or between any user and the YAML files, because as for CDK, you will just use it in your IDE. You will have your code. You will have the inline documentation. You can reduce the copy-paste mistakes, and it has support for several programming languages. Is the programming languages you use already on the slide? Or do you use something else? Okay, so it's on the slide, more or less. If not, you can, contribute. It's open source. Ask for it. In a nutshell, this is how CDKs will look like. So when you synthesize that, you will have a YAML template, a YAML manifest that you can use in your Kubernetes cluster. You can have a look and say, okay, but this doesn't really simplify my work. Those are more or less the same lines of code. Yeah, I still get the inline documentation and tooling support and all of those, but it's like I'm writing all of these things. So I would like to share this code because it matches perfectly this scenario. So basically means that you reach perfection when there is nothing else you can subtract from that. And yeah, maybe it's true or not in the software developer world, but it works perfectly here. Because on top of CDK8s, there was launched the cdk8s Plus, which is a library built on top of CDK8s that actually takes into consideration your intent. Because when you use YAML and when you use Kubernetes, you really define the state that you want. Give me 2 replicas, give me that. Is just the very, very, you're describing the state. But what would be really, really interesting is to define your intent. So what you would like to do, and you will have some completion and some better ways of doing that. So if we look at this, do we really need the metadata? Not really. Do we really need to know more about, 1 second, the templates and labels? If I'm running this on my own computer just to test things out, I don't need this. And we can look at other things that we can cross out. I don't need to name my containers if I just use those in my test environment, let's say, and I also don't need a selector. So what happens? We reach the intent, right? So my intent is just to have this image and to spin up a container, to have a deployment for an nginx. This is what I want, and this is how you can reach it through CDK+, which is an API abstraction that really takes into consideration the intent that you have. How it will look in practice as a workflow. So cdk8s is something you install in your CLI. It's not related to any cloud provider, any infrastructure that you run, because it's on your computer. You install it in your computer, and you have, when you initialize that, you can initialize an application in the specific programming language that you want, and that will give you a template app where you can start to add and build your charts and your constructs and define your deployments, your stateful sets, and so on. After you've finished writing everything that you need in your Kubernetes cluster, you can just use cdk8s. And what that will do is it will translate from programming language into a YAML file, and you can then take that YAML file, use kubectl to deploy it, or just make use of your existing GitOps processes, because if you're doing this in production, I hope you're doing it through some GitOps best practices for your company. And of course, you can package it, because it's a software application. You can package it, you can share it with your team, and yeah, what else you can think of is, if you have it in your IDE, for example, you can think about using some coding companions, coding GenAI assistants, and so on. So that will be a really good thing to add. But other than that, what can be added is actually an extra step, because cdk8s offer this third-party integration with some validation for your manifests. And this kind of validations can be from open source, like that tree, or from Snyk, or something that you build your own, and you want to validate those manifests and make sure that you're following best practices in terms of security and so on before using that manifest. So this is a really good and very important thing you can add to your Kubernetes deployments. And then, of course, use kubectl or GitOps to deploy everything. And you might ask actually about CRDs and other things, right? So if you are having CRDs, those are really easy to use in cdk8s. You will just import them, and you might say, okay, but I already have this package manager that I'm using, it's Helm, and it's working perfectly fine. You can use that in cdk8s, so everything is covered for you. Okay. Do you have maybe any questions at this point? No? Are you curious about the next steps and how you can start implementing it? I see a few nodes, okay. Okay, next steps. So, because we are at the Kubernetes conference, and because almost everybody in the room runs Kubernetes clusters, I may assume that you're all Kubernetes fans. So if you want to take it to the next level in cdk8s, you can use what is called AWS Controller for Kubernetes, which means you're basically defining the infrastructure in your Kubernetes deployments. So that was a really interesting thing I just found out. And it's very interesting because if you really want to control everything in one place and you don't want to invest any time in infrastructure as code or any other things, you just want to have your Kubernetes cluster, you can do that. And you can find support for the services that are mostly used in these deployments. So things like for storage, or things for APIs, like API gateway, things to keep you safe, like KMS to encrypt everything. So you will find support, and you can use that through ACK. Who in the room has heard before of ACK? Wow. Okay, so you knew that before me, right? I might have a few questions after this session for you. Okay, how you can actually get started is cdk8s.io. This is the main page of this project. And you can find there also the link to the GitHub repo for the supporting team of this project. And you can even go on to the second QR, just take one sample app and deploy it and just play with it, see if that's something that might be helpful for you. So I really recommend following the first link, and then you will see everything from the documentation's point of view, also about cdk8s plus, it's everything in there. And I kept the best at the last, because I mentioned about my passion for the community, and I think this is what we are doing here today. I'm very happy to see this very nice community of Kubernetes people and CNCF people. So this is why I want to take just a few minutes to tell you a bit more about the community overall around this project. So CDK for Kubernetes, it's a CNCF project. It is in sandbox for the moment, but the teams are actively working on it. And of course, I saw somebody wants to have it in different programming languages. You can start contributing, asking for that, but also contributing, of course. Around CDK, there is this CDK Day conference, which is online. It is organized from the community for the community. I was a volunteer there before joining AWS. I'm part of it way before my company and being at this company. We organized it a couple of years ago, and last year, I don't have any news for this year, but I will share you if I have a date or something. There is Construct Hub. So I did not mention this, but there is this Construct Hub where everybody can publish their constructs, be it in CDK, CDK for Terraform, or cdk8s. So if you build something cool and just want to share that with the community, you can do it there as well. You can find constructs created by AWS, but you can find constructs created by the community for the community. And it's just a nice way of, after you're spending lots of hours and energy to build something, to share it to the community. And also there is a Slack workspace. How many of you are using Slack? Okay, so there are a few users. I know it's not that maybe well spread in Romania, but I can say that I have too many Slack workspaces, so that that can happen. But there is one for CDK, and it has channels dedicated for CDK8s. Why is that important for you? If you start using it and you need support, those there will be those people that actually use it, actively deploy it, and people from the people who build it and users, right? And there are several people on the cdk8s channel that actively help each other out. When everybody has a questions, there are at least 2 answers from my experience. So everybody just jumps in and helps. And other than that, the main reason I'm here today, I'm kidding. But I actually searched the internet, and cdk8s has a very good feedback from the community and /Kubernetes community on Reddit. And this person is very, very scared that it will go away. So I'm asking you, let's help it. Let's help this person out and try it out. And if it's something that really it's useful for you, write a blog post or just join the communities, join the open source project and start contributing. I'm not sure how I'm on time. I just wanted to show you quickly a few things about it. So this is a surprise demo if we still have the time. Wouter, are we fine? 5 minutes, okay. Okay, we're fine with the time. This is a bonus demo just to show you a bit how it works. Okay, notice. Something happened. Okay. I would like to see my code. I don't know how we can change that in the back. That will be difficult. Okay, then we can do it in another way. Oh, if it's just display, I have it here. It's link manager.
Mirrored.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's gonna make
Yeah, okay. Okay, so I do have a demo, and I have a few lines of code. So, because I don't want to take the time from the... no, yes, exactly. I don't want to take the time from the next speaker. I don't want to mess everything up. I have some code for you and some demo on how you can bring it all from the programming language into a template file. And I can show that to you if you want to see it after this session. Here on the slide is a QR code for feedback. I would really appreciate if you take the time to just give me feedback about this session, feedback about me as a speaker. If this was something useful for you, just if you really want to leave me a message or anything, I will go through each of those. And thank you. Thank you for being here. And so after you go through the CLI installation, you will find all those steps in the cdk8s.io. You will initialize a project in your favorite programming language. I will be honest with you, I use Python usually, but I want to challenge myself to learn TypeScript. So here you can see some TypeScript code. But of course, I do have a bit of help here with Code Whisper and everything. And what you will generate when you use cdk8s init, you will get a template, right? And then in that template, you can start to add your definitions. For this is actually exactly our simple app that we had in the first slides. What I did, I added this also the cdk8s plus library in here, and then I tried to add everything that you saw in the slides, right? So I tried to create a DB, and you can see like even when you start typing, you will let me just show you the support with the inline const db, and then you can, of course, I do have, so it realizes that it is a stateful set, and I can just select it and just define a database and edit it the way I want it. But this is what I actually prepared already. We do have a stateful set for the DB. I already added the production requirements, like having 2 replicas, bit, spread, so we have some sort of higher availability. I isolated it because by default you have all-in, all-out traffic for the pods. I added a cache here, also with cdk8s plus, and you can see straight away, right, the inline documentation and auto-completion that you can use. I also added here the same for availability and spreading. You might wonder here that I did not define a service for the database, right? I don't have to do that, because cdk8s will know that I need that, because this is a stateful set. How else will you use it, right? So I don't have, I can, if I want, I can just add a service for, but that's not true for the cache, right? So for the cache, it doesn't know if I need it or not. So I will define it as a cache service, and I will expose it via service and give to the web app the details for that caching system, right? So by now, we defined the database, we made it ready for production, we defined the cache, ready for production, we defined the web, ready for production. And what else? We mentioned that we want to collocate. So if I'm new to Kubernetes, I don't even know what collocation means, right? So that will be really easy to do in a programming language, because I will just how this works is just you type web, and then you can look at scheduling, right? And when you type scheduling, you will have all the options for scheduling already as a documentation inline for you, right? So I just selected the collocate with cache. And I also defined some rules. This is as simple as allow web connections allowed to cache, and cache connections allowed to DB. So this is very, very easy to define in code. And the permissions about the front office group that I mentioned, you can also define that just with this, like, permissions, grant, read, write, right? This is easy. And of course, because I have to expose the web, I also define it and expose it through a load balancer. And what happens, I don't think I modified some things, but if I go and do cdk8s synth, and here it can say if you have a mistake in your code, it won't synthesize. It will tell you the mistake, so this is also good, so you're sure that you did the right thing. And when it synthesizes, it will save in this here the YAML file. So this is your YAML file. You can see. 1 second. Doesn't seem to work to make it bigger, but what you can see is like you have the entire YAML file, and if you look at the YAML file, this has 460 lines of code. So who here loves more this version? Who here loves more this version? Okay, so that was it. I hope you liked it, and if you have questions, yeah, ask away.